You looking for squirrels? All right, guys, time has come. Where is she going? I'm hoping there's not a squirrel nesting in the hot tub. So time has come. I found my next project back in early February, and it's now mid-March. I've just been kind of sitting on it, waiting for the weather to kind of warm up, because I know a lot of guys, they do their builds during the winter. Because I tend to build outside, I ride in the winter. I build when the weather's warmer, unless I have to do maintenance, just because there's only so much cold your fingers can handle. But we're getting a warming trend this week, so now is the time. There we go. So we have a blaster of unknown origin. This is gonna be fun. All right, well, this one's kind of janky. Ready for the rebound? Oh, I must be nuts. It literally came in baskets. This is something special. All right, so I know a lot of you guys are thinking another blaster. You had just done a blaster, just did this refresh for a buddy of mine. This one was a real budget kind of transformation, sitting in the woods for 5 years. There's still some things that, we've kind of done the cheap route on. Ultimately, for example, the exhaust is kind of sort of welded under here, but there's air leaks. This really should be cut and the right kind of joint put in. But we're trying to get back on the trail here. So that one was a fast winter refresh, blown transmission, but 5 years in the woods does a whole lot of damage. This one I want to go slow on. So I have wanted to build up a blaster and go slower, take my time, and really just kind of enjoy the build, as opposed to, moving quickly to get something on the trails. I don't actually know what year this is. It is a first gen. We do have the rear cable pull brake, although the first janky thing I noticed, a couple of washers sandwiching this one to hold the cable pull, but the armature is all here. This peg is bent backwards, so I'm not sure what you hit there. Looking through a lot of the rest of this, we have DG exhaust, looks rebuildable, so we can pull that out, repack. This grab bar looks beefy. This doesn't look store-bought, especially if I look at it straight on. The angle is not perfectly 90 degrees. It's bent out a little bit. Somebody made this thing, but this thing looks intense. I think I might actually just clean this up and run it. I like that. This would have gone to your oil inject and your rear tail light. That's gone. There's no chain. There is an aluminum aftermarket skid plate down here. Well, that's kind of nice. This looks like the factory shock. No idea if there's anything left in this, if this is just going to bounce, no compression. Noticing these yellow rims, there's only a few years that blasters came with these. If these are OEM to this could be, oh boy, 96, some of that era. Here's the VIN, 10th number in. Huh, 10 is a 2, hang on now. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The frame VIN 10th digit in is a 2, which would seem to imply, well, I guess that's possible. I was going to say 03 to 06 is Gen 2, where you'd have hydraulic brakes, all that. So it's quite possible this was the last year the Gen 1s were made, which I believe would imply that it had a multifunctional taillight. Don't quote me on that one, but multifunctional in the sense that you stomp on the brakes, it would get brighter, things like that. However, when I look at this brake mechanism, I don't see any kind of setup for electrical on that side. So I'm not sure that's the case. Plastics are all here. Tire rub. It's tire rub. Look at that tire rub on the plastic. Makes me think that shock is probably shot. Probably nothing left there but a pogo stick. But I'm not seeing cracks. Let's get under the seat here. Looks like a rusted out air filter aftermarket, maybe a Canon. I always wonder when I get into these things, I'm gonna find a mouse nest or just like get into like some dude's home full of acorns. I do see, well, I know it's winter, I don't want snakes or, what the? No idea what that's supposed to be. Still has a lot of the original stickers and plates on here. These plastics aren't cut down. Obviously, heel guards are missing. Looks like this was last registered 2018, New Hampshire. I'm gonna guess on the back side of this fairing, and this one here has probably been hit with some kind of like an SC1 or so. We're gonna have to get into these, see what we can do to bring these back with like a lacquer thinner, boiled linseed oil. Blue should come back pretty nice. Here's one of the challenges and things I don't like about blue plastics and Yamaha blue plastics. All of these stretch marks. Yamaha blue gets these bend marks everywhere. So we're gonna see if we build this up, if we wanna keep these, if we wanna swap these out for like a Meyer aftermarket, anything like that. Steel rims, I'd love to swap these out for aluminum, but one step at a time. Looking at the bolt pattern, those look to be the OEM 4x100 millimeter. So these rims, tougher to find. If I were to swap these hubs out for something from a Banshee, a Warrior, YFZ for example, I'd have a 4x115 millimeter bolt pattern. Many more rims there. Ultimately, the splines are the same, so you can slip them right on. I see fresh nuts on here, but no cotter pin in the castle nut. Same thing up here. Don't think these tires are holding air. Headlight still here. Left me his gloves. No key. However, on these blasters, really you unplug one wire, and usually it's the green underneath here. Unplug that and you can start without a key, so not a big deal at all. The Tours would have gone up here, so it looks like there's some element of a Tours delete. Throttle cable does return. Here's a front brake. Don't know if that works. We'll get into that. Clutching mechanism still has the old parking brake. Wow, look at that. Well, or what's left of that parking brake. There's no cable for the parking brake. Ultimately, on the bit down there, the cable looks like a shorty cable. Carb. What do we have? I stuck a baggie on this because I brought this thing home in a rainstorm. This does look to be OEM, stamped Mikuni on here. The bottom of this case doesn't match the top, so I wonder if we have most of an OEM here, and this has been a part of a rebuild kit or a mix and match. That's just making a guess there. This has been open to the elements other than me putting a baggie on it. So we're going to want to do a complete Tours delete, get rid of this brick here, clean this up. Seems functional. Big splitting in the tire, so she's going to need new sneakers even if she holds air. Tie rods not bent. Don't know much about the coil here. That's not a crack. Okay. nuts and bolts, all kinds of different things. I mean, that's not OEM, neither is the zip ties, but plastics here. I really ought to grab a screwdriver and pull this off to make sure there's some brain, some CDI back here. Find out real quick. It's nice to have this cowl, because if you're looking for just this piece on eBay, that's typically $80 to find that. That's in good shape. Just a little cleanup on the plastic. Honestly, electronics are all here. Everything grounded out. Must have been in a field. Got grass growing up in it. Couple of things disconnected. The green is connected, which makes me imply that he must have had a key, just lost the key, but you know, we'll end up deleting this mechanism. And this is all coming off the Tor, so unplug the Tor. Top one's probably the Tor brain here, I'm fairly confident. Down below, CDI. Got all kinds of grease in the got a lot of grease in for the brakes here. And there's no way I'll be able to tell just from looking at here if the steering stem is straight or not. But overall, I'm gonna say this is definitely a roller. But already you're starting to see some costs here. Well, there's a lot of costs until we see the rest. Here's everything that came with. Now, he gave me 2 seats. This one here was covered by a family member, custom job, from what he was saying. So I ended up with 2 blaster seats. But let me start picking through the containers here to find out just what we have and what we're missing. All right. So the way the guy described it to me is that the motor blew up. It was running he said a Chinese piston. And Chinese pistons and blasters, 2 strokes, nah. But he had some pieces here. So coming right off the top, he said he had a Wiseco piston. This is 66 millimeter. This looks brand new. Yeah, it looks like a brand new Wiseco. It is 66 millimeter. 66 millimeter is stock bore. There's a new set of rings down in here, wrist pin. That's great. All right, part of the case. Clutch side. Looks nice. I don't see damage. I don't see nicks. Airbox cover. Another thing we're going to need a bolt kit. Here's the head. Oh, we got damage on the head. This is OEM. So you recognize it's OEM. It's stamped on here. This 2XJ. And the Yamaha logo, and you also sometimes will see this, the Y-1, indicating that this is not a China head, this is an OEM head. First glance, the condition looks fine, but looking at this is all dimpled around. This definitely looks like either dirt got into the head. Who knows how that would happen? I mean, can you imagine pulling that through the carb? Or this was a piston that broke up and just dimpled this all out. This should be smooth. All right, so we got some damage there. Here we have a motor. We have a gasket like that. All right, let's see what this motor looks like, because a damaged motor, getting cases for blasters is a real pain. Cases have just gotten very expensive. So, okay, we turn. Looking for up and down play, no up and down. Side to side, just a little. Would seem to me this crank is okay. There's the remnants of some oil down in here. Missing a few nuts. And there's something you always end up seeing on these blaster motors. But this tab here broken off, this is where the spring goes for the clutch actuator arm. When you pull the clutch, twists in here. So always find this on the left side cases. These left side cases are hard to find intact. We got one of the hanger bolts for the frame. Shifter's going to be fine. A little loose there, not welded on. Doesn't appear to be stripped out, so we'll take that off. Also in here, chain did some kind of wear on the aluminum, but it did not punch through the case. So that's great to see. See if we find a cap here in one of these boxes. Stator wiring. All that wiring looks good. Let's look at the other side. Clutch side. Okay, so kicker gear assembly. Hopefully that's somewhere in a box. Clutch. This has been sitting. I bet these plates are, well, they're going to be stuck together now until you pull the clutch. But first glance, I don't see damage on the case. I might be missing a dowel pin here. And dowel pins are going to be important. There's a lot of rotational energy. There's just a lot on these cases. So you do want to put these dowel pins in and not just rely on the bolts. Moving on. Looks to be the rest of the DG pipe. And let's see. Looks like this might be the header flange on here. It's a little rusty. There's no holes in here. There's no reason we can't clean this up and give this a high temp coat of paint. This is a left bend pipe. So when this comes out of the motor, front of the quad sitting this way, comes down, hooks to the left. So you get 1, 2, 3, well, you might just call that one, or 90 degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4 90 degrees in a left bend. A higher quality pipe, a higher flow pipe would be a right bend pipe. It would come down, one bend to the right, bend up, bend back. So you lose a bend, better flow. And part of this journey, I got to decide which way I want to make some of the investments. Motor, chassis, suspension, all kinds of things here. DG pipes, a lot of guys don't really like these. They compare the DGs to really a stock pipe. Where the other pipe that I'm running, I have the FMF Power Core 2, kind of a step up, a mid-range RPM pipe. And then my buddies is running a Toomey, really a high RPM pipe. I'll be interested to put this on, but I don't know how long this is going to stick around. Got part of a gasket. Other side case cover, this has the case saver. Case saver is intact, so whatever happened with the chain to wear on that aluminum didn't happen here. That looks to be all there. I got a sprocket. This thing is shark finned out. Something to watch for when you have a sprocket. If you can see it, all of these teeth, almost like they're pulled this way. They've just been so worn. And they're widened up. These really, they're almost like stretched through the teeth. This is a shot sprocket. Absolutely. That's not OEM, whatever that is. I think we have part of the chain slider from the frame. Oh boy. All right, let's see what's in the baggies. I'm just gonna dump it out. Okay, we're hoping to find this kicker gear assembly for the motor. Looks to be all there. That's fantastic. The kicker, also important. I have most of a master link. And I say most because I don't have the clip that goes over the end of this. This should also be part of the kicker. I'm gonna have to double check a manual. I think that this spring here clips in right on top of this gear, something like so. But I'm gonna check a manual on that one. Looks like I've got a head bolt. Teeth are a little gummed up on here. I can run a chase through there. I've never seen this piece on a blaster. What is... I think this is spare parts. This does not look like it goes here. Important spring, a little rusty. This is part of the armature that sits down on top here for the armature arm when you pull your clutch. I've got some non-OEM bolts again. Looks like I've got a number of case bolts. We have some E-clips. I'll put this somewhere else. This is part of the oil pump gear. We won't be reusing that. This nut is most likely for the kicker. Okay, so we're already missing a seal somewhere. And I believe this washer is part of the armature. Something like that. I'm going to double check that. Some more washers. Also found in here one of the, I'm going to guess this goes on the swing arm. One of the caps here. All right, obviously a chain. Everything but the master link. That chain's looking pretty janky. Another bag of parts. He probably had these organized so you remember where they go, but I don't know where they go, so. Looks like a mixture. Some of these might be the 4 head bolts that go at the base of the cylinder. He did give me a cylinder. We're going to take a look at that. Aha! Might have just found something important. Key! We have a key. Gasket from the head. Let's see. It's a big bolt, big nut. I wonder if this is for the main swing arm bolt. Here we have a number of case bolts again. This one is for mounting the motor to the frame. That could be, I think that's going to be back on this side. So the reeds look fine. Reeds look fine to me. When you're looking at reeds, you're looking to see if you can see air, you know, and there's just a touch of daylight between these, which is fine, but you wouldn't want to see these all curled back. I don't know. Someone will have to leave in the comments if these are stock reeds, if these are aftermarket. He does have some Boyson stickers for Boyson reeds on the ATV, but it doesn't mean these are actually Boyson reeds. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say these are Boyson power reeds. I did a quick look on Google, and these look to match what I have exactly. So, yeah, I'm going to say these are Boysons. Here we go. Cylinder. Looking down in there, there's a touch of rust in there. I do see a little bit of cross-hatching, which cross-hatching, you're really looking at almost like, you know, X kind of scratches going back and forth. And a good cross-hatch, it allows the oil to flow. What you don't want to see, you don't want to see vertical scoring, anything that shows that a piston was rubbing on without, you know, got oil starved. Looking down, the threads look good in this head. Ooh, right off the bat here. This is not OEM. This is not stamped like a niche. There's no of the 2XJ, the X2J stamp on here that would signal OEM. This is a China knockoff. And I was right, the exhaust flange would bolt here. There's a gasket. That's a gasket there that could come out. Yeah, this is where we'd see it right there. On an OEM, that would be stamped. That would be stamped to match the head here. 2XJ. You'd see something like that. No stamp. So this is a Chinese head. So concern here. A lot of the argument is that these heads, they don't hold up. They don't do heat transfer as well as an OEM. So more risk of overheating. We're an air-cooled motor. There's a decision here. There's a finding an OEM head is tough, and often you can find one and then you can bore it for whatever size piston. We have a brand new Wiseco piston. I'd love to use that stock bore. And this is going to need to be cleaned up. I can see even right there some more of that coloration. This got left out, got some moisture in it. Absolutely going to need to be gone through to do a deburr, deglaze, just kind of recross hatch it. Finally, we do have a tank. Tank cover. And it also looks like it's in great shape. Even the little ears here aren't ripped out. This plastic looks fine. Tank. Absolutely nothing in there. Okay. Petcock. Coming back around for missing pieces. Here we go. Here's our armature. Armature looks to be good condition. And this is for bolting onto the bottom of the head, which is important. So that is all there. So that's it. So that's the next basket case here. We got most of it. We have most of it. So where to start? So a couple of phases that I'm thinking of here. You know, one, get it running as it sits. You know, first thing, do kind of the quick refresh job. For all of you guys that watch, you have different interests, and some of you guys just want to get riding, get out on the trails, not do a big overhaul, something fast. So for that, I think I'm going to do exactly that first. We're going to take what we have here, get it back together. I'll have to make a few decisions. I may not run that cylinder. Man, boy, if I run that cylinder, go easy on me in the comments. But get it back together, carb clean, do a lot of the basic stuff, see what we can do to get this ride for the absolute minimum. Once we have it up and riding, then comes the fun. And I picked this one up because I want to go slow. I want to take my time. We do a lot of getting things running quickly, just that, so we can get the family out in the woods, out in the trails, have some fun. I want to slow down. I want to have some fun. I want to build something up. So, decision tree. We could start with the motor. We could start building up the motor. We'd have to hunt for parts. It's harder to find some of the parts for some of these old things. For example, one thing we could do in here to open it up, we could put a +3mm Vito's stroker crank. With the +3, you don't have to do any carving out of the bottom of the case. It'll fit. However, you will need to put a spacer on the top of your cylinder before you put the head on so you don't bang your piston to the top here and destroy anything. But you can get a couple extra cc's out of that. Also, the exhaust, doing something like moving from a left bend to a right bend can open up that flow as well. Come around to the carb. If I put a Vito's stroker kit on here, really to open this up, a port and polish job, really be important. Something like that I could send out, have professionally done. Someone like Ken O'Connor Racing could open that up for me. This would run with just a +3 stroker in it, but you're not realizing the potential. If I want the potential, port and polish job, also do a head mod. Again, Ken O'Connor Racing can do something like that. Match up your airflow going out, pipe, higher performance pipe, CT Racing, some of those name brands. Then you're going to have to match your carb and your airbox. If I'm going to do that, I'd end up cutting this out, doing something like a CFM airbox, aluminum airbox, changes it out for high flow, and then the carb, move off from the OEM and go for something like a PWK 28. So all of those things, jetting, all of that, there's some money if I go down that route. Going that route really takes me down that route of a nice built blaster motor. Do I want to push that extra cc, push that extra power on a chassis, on a platform like this? And I say it like that because a lot of power on an unstable platform can get kind of fun. Fun is subjective. So let's talk about the platform here. From the factory, I'm fairly confident the blaster is a 43-inch wide stance ATV. Don't quote me on this, but if you're racing, I think you've got to stay under 50 inches width on it. And if you're going on state trails, the gates on the state trails, 50 inch. So that's about as wide. So looking at the front end, few options here. You can buy extension kits that kind of go across the front here to move the existing A-arms out. So you get some extra inches. You can go as wide at 2 and even 3 inches on each side. If it were 3 inches, 43 plus 6, you could go full 49 inches wide. You could also at that point, with that wider stance, go with a long travel shock. At that point, you could put something like a YFZ shock on here. Here's some stock footage of one of those Diamond J custom extension kits. You get them in several colors, but you can see it extends out the suspension. You can also do lowering of the suspension by flipping it around. And you can buy these in several widths as well, depending on how much width you want. These A-arms from the factory, these are fixtures in here. These aren't actual hind joints. I could go aftermarket, get a long travel suspension, and instead of doing a kit to bump this existing A-arm infrastructure out, buy actual longer A-arms. Something like American Star Racing, they have a +3, +1 long travel. Also Full Flight Racing has the same options. Do your research on these, because doing these you're probably gonna have to swap out your spindles. You're gonna need to buy long travel suspension. If you wanted to bolt up OEM, Team Alba Racing has a +4, which is ultimately +2 on each side, and this one does bolt up with your stock spindles and your stock suspension, so another option. If I push this out through a Full Flight ASR and check on the manufacturer, different ones have different needs, but I will likely not be able to reuse the spindles. I would have to go to something like a YFZ spindle because I can't, and new joints. So new spindle implies new brakes. These are cable pull brakes. If I do new spindles, we'd be doing a hydro setup. Now if I go with YFZ spindles from like a Raptor 450, then I could also use that brake kit. Hydro, run that all back up. That's cost. A-arms, not cheap. Reasonable shocks, again, once I do A-arms and go for longer travel, not cheap. Spindles, brakes, same thing. So quite quickly, if I want that stability, I have a couple of choices there. Full-on racing setup, doing the shocks, doing the A-arms, doing the spindles, doing the braking system. That adds up fast. Lower cost way to get in the game. Diamond J Customs, use the existing A-arms, push those out. Maybe I do shocks now, maybe I do shocks down the road to upgrade those. But that allows me to use that existing infrastructure of the spindles. Frankly, I could still ride the cable pull brakes if I wanted to, if I trusted them. That's just the front. Come around to the back. On the back, if I want the stability, I could buy a longer axle. I could be a Banshee axle. There's a few other manufacturers I can get an axle for here. I haven't actually, when I tear this down, I'm going to have to inspect, understand the quality of the carrier bearings, any play in there. So doing that, I can get some width with a new axle. The other way I could go about this, and I could do it on the front as well, is just run spacers. On the front, if I run spacers, it messes with your bump steer. So the further out they come, when the suspension compresses, the tie rods don't move at the same rate or distance that your A-arms do, which causes your steering to kind of, well, not perfectly perpendicular to where you're riding. The challenge there, if you're jumping and you land, the ATV might want to dart into a corner because your wheels are almost like they're kind of turning when they're compressed. So for the back, I prefer to ride with the front a little bit wider than the back because I ride in the woods, and if I fit between the trees up front, I want to know that the rear end is also going to fit through the trees. So absolutely don't have the rear end wider than the front end. That's just a recipe for a surprise. But adding this all together for all that suspension there, really the same cost that I could do for building the motor. So I'm going to have to break this down to what must be done. Refresh getting it up and going, because I don't think these tires are going to hold air. But if I'm going to do tires, I'm going to do rims. I want to get on aluminum rims, and I want to get off the 4x100 bolt pattern on the back, get into something a little more universal, so it adds up fast. So refresh first, get it running, find out what we have, what we're missing, and then I got to make that decision around, am I going to build the motor first, or am I going to build the platform, build out the suspension and chassis first? And then there's all the fun bells and whistles. Nerf bars, absolutely for this. I'd like to tear this down, do powder coating. Found a guy just down the street up here that can do some of that. Plastics, decisions there. I have a feeling that this ATV, I'm probably going to invest a little more into this one than I could get back out of it with the post-COVID market. But this is going to be fun. So all that said, a couple of the obvious things here. I've got to find another aftermarket head. This head's all dinged up, probably from a blown up piston. I've got to make a decision on running that China cylinder, at least for the quick refresh type thing. I got to figure out what that bore is. What is that bore? Yeah. It is. That's exactly 66 millimeter. 66, right on the money there. So that's still OEM bore. We're going to need a bolt set. We're missing bolts from the motors here. Like I said, the head there, we're going to need a gasket set. We're going to need a seals set. I know better than to not do seals. Certainly some shop supplies, some fuel line. We're going to need a carb rebuild kit. I don't have the master link. I don't want to run this chain even on a refresh, because if, you know, some things you can get away with reasonably cheap, but if that chain gets thrown and it punches a hole in this case, again, that would really be unfortunate, because getting cases, tough to find. Best place you're looking for cases, hop on the Facebook Marketplace, find some of the blaster groups, get in there, talk to the guys on there that are salvaging these things. What else? What else are we going to need? I don't think those tires are going to hold air. I can just pull off one of the other blasters just to kind of get the feel for it. Electrical looks there. Sprockets. Spark plug. There's no spark plug. Gonna need a spark plug. Add that to the list. So really at its most basic level, for all of this that's laying out here, I'm gonna guess, if I don't do anything with the tires and just swap off for another one to ride for a little while, this is also under $200 to get this up and running. The platform, I paid $650 for the platform. I know, it's post-COVID. Before COVID, I was buying blasters that were running for, you know, $600 and $800. So everything post-COVID for blown up stuff. Not bad though, for the amount of labor that's in here. An afternoon, this will be back together. I think sub $200, you're on the trails and you're riding. And then once we do that, we're gonna have some decisions to make. So for now, I gotta hunt some parts, and then we'll come back around on another warm day and we'll start putting this thing back together. I'm gonna spend a little bit of time and study to make sure bolts, because I only found one motor mount bolt. Should be more. Oh. Remember what I was saying about the plastic scrubbing? That shock? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Ready? Wait, ready for the rebound? Oh my goodness. That shock. That's just nothing but spring. Even on a refresh, I can't safely ride that. You hit one bump, this thing's going to be smacking you in the butt and just launching you right over the front. All right, let's talk about this for just a moment here, because this is something special. All right, so I thought I had my list of things to kind of get refresh and going, but even that shock's that's too janky for me. Yeah, and I've ridden some janky things. Even on a refresh, when you have just a spring, you don't have that dampening. When you hit a bump, the back end just comes out and it just smacks you. And it can hurt, one, but two, depending on how you're landing, what kind of bump you're hitting, it just smacks you, knocks you right over the handlebars. So it's not a good situation. That shock is smoked. So go back a few minutes. I was talking about the rear end suspension. I talked about widening the axle. I didn't talk anything about the suspension. What a lot of guys will do is they'll get rid of that stock blaster shock. They'll put in something from a Honda 400EX, which has that reservoir attached to it for that nitrogen that you can tune the rebound on as well. You might also see guys doing Z400 shocks, a few others as well. But to do them, they're not quite a direct bolt up. In the case of the 400EX shock, once you take the stock one out, it's a bit narrower and the bolt won't fit. To make it fit, inside the rubber bushing is a metal bushing. You take that out and you ride just on the rubber. It's not a good thing to do. You'll wear out and then you'll get all kinds of smack in the top here. You can go to HPM Power Sports or Ken O'Connor Racing and you can get a bushing kit for a couple of bucks that'll fit the 400EX. Comes with the bolt, comes with the bushings for the narrower head on the 400EX. And with the 400EX, my understanding is you can fit the reservoir without having to do modifications to the frame. Some of the other aftermarket shocks with the reservoir sitting right up top, you have to cut the tab out up here because it wants to rub the frame. So in this case, this is something I'm going to get my hands on now, even as a part of the refresh. Pretty certain I'll go with a 400EX. I'm going to do a little bit of research because it'd be nice not to cut the frame. But we're gonna have to swap. We're gonna have to swap that shock out. Yeah, nope. I should check the front shocks. But the front, to any extent, the front aren't as shot as the back, so we'll focus on that one for now. But I'm gonna get this put away for today. We gotta go hunt some parts. Take some time, go back to all my favorite haunts for that, see where we land.